This podcast is available on our website, zipsportsmedia.com, and from all good podcast providers. Hello, everybody, and welcome along to a bonus edition of the Game of Two Halves podcast. This isn't in line with our linear 1, 2, 3 episodes. This is a bit of bonus content that you wouldn't normally get. So I'm Sean Watson, Kieron Dobson's joining me on the line. And this is the international breaks. There's no Premier League going on, but there's still Premier League news to talk about. Couple of things to go at. So we just thought we'd give you a little 10 minutes snip of exactly our thoughts on a couple of the big issues that have occurred during the international break, mainly Project Big Picture, which I'm sure you've all heard about by now, was the plan of the Manchester United and Liverpool mainly spearheaded this plan to change the way the Premier League is run and change the structure of the EFL payments and things like that. And this has been sort of a landmark proposal in terms of the Premier League, something like this that hasn't happened since its inception 28 years ago now. So it's a pretty big issue. So we thought we'd just get together on a Wednesday night and do a quick 10 minutes on exactly where we stand on it and where we see it going forward. So, Kieron, how are you, by the way? Sorry for the...
No, I'm fine.
Quick introduction, yeah.
Yeah, no problem. I just remembered as well, long-time listeners of the show will remember that we've done something similar to before. We called it A Game of Two Halves Extra Time.
We did, yes. A Game of Two Halves Extra Time, correct. So this won't be going out as a podcast on iTunes and Spotify, but it will be available, as you've probably found, on the YouTube page. So thanks for coming and checking us out. And we hope you enjoy what we're about to say. Not rehearsed. I don't know what Kieron feels. He doesn't know what I feel. He just said leave it to the pod. So here we are. I've got my notes in front of me. My trusty phone's got the bullet points. I'm just going to whiz through those just quickly, and we'll get into it in a little bit of depth. So the Project Big Picture proposals were that the Premier League was cut from 20 to 18 clubs. The bottom two teams in the Premier League were relegated automatically, with the 16th placed team joining in with the Championship playoffs. The League Cup and the Community Shield would be abolished under this proposal. Parachute payments would be scrapped as well. But a £250 million rescue fund would be made immediately available to the EFL, and 25% of all future TV money would also be available to the EFL clubs. £100 million paid to the FA to make up for lost revenue during the COVID-19 pandemic, and the top 9 longest serving clubs in the Premier League will be given special voting rights on certain issues. So, as of today, Wednesday, this proposal has been scrapped and voted down by the Premier League teams, which we thought would happen. I mean, it's going to benefit the top 9 teams, but the other 11, the other 14, however you want to phrase it in terms of top 6 and 14 or 9 and 11, they probably weren't going to vote for it, and that's obviously the case now. But based on the bullet points I've just gone through there, where do you sit on the whole project big picture?
So, like everything else in the world these days, there's good points and bad points to, the proposals. And I think the way I looked at it from the start was we actually did a podcast in the summer, so we did put in a bit of groundwork, but obviously we didn't get it released. But I think me and you were talking about potential innovations we'd like to see in the game. I think a couple of things that have been proposed are things that we have talked about in the past that we think actually would be quite good for the Premier League and for football, and for the viewers, which ultimately is what it should all be about, and the people who make decisions should be thinking about. But I think with this, for me, it was I like to think I could go in and sort of pick and mix. There were things that I liked, that particularly, as something I've talked about before in one of the previous podcasts, I would scrap the League Cup personally. But the reality is, because that will mean there's less games to put on TV, there's less fans to go and buy tickets in stadiums whenever that happens again. It means that there's going to be a loss financially to the game. So that was never going to happen. But I think that the proposed compromise of removing European clubs that competing in European competitions actually was a really good idea, because obviously the big clubs, or the traditional big six, there's, like you said before, we're spoiled United fans, but maybe Spurs would quite like to win it, but the reality is
Spurs will say what they can get right now.
Well, yeah. I mean, exactly. I mean, Mourinho want to win it, there's no doubt, and maybe he will, but
but your Liverpool, Man City, Arsenal, I think they're sort of at a stage where the League Cup is a secondary prize, and that's not to do down the League Cup, but the focus is on the bigger trophies, the European Cup, Premier League.
100%. And again, the teams that would be left in it, typically speaking, for the most part, will be teams that aren't competing in Europe on a regular basis. So there's an incentive there for them to win a trophy, get more TV time, and then again, the other added benefit is that the teams that are playing in Europe, then it's a nice leveler in terms of the schedule, because obviously teams that are competing in all 4 trophies, obviously we see last year United got into 4 semi-finals and fought for 3rd place in the league. But City historically have done well domestically, and it's meant that they've played a lot of games. And I laugh about their poor performance in Europe, but I mean they could make the case that they're competing in 4 competitions every year. I know they've got a big squad, but that is a drain. So I think, all things considered, I think that'd be a really good proposal. And I think most people would probably be in favour of that. Likewise, I think obviously the arranged funding that has been proposed that will go to teams in the Football League, I think everyone again would say that's a really good plan.
Because I think now on the TV revenue, I think it's 4%. I think I've read that the current TV revenue goes to the EFL clubs, whereas this new proposal it ratchets that up to 25. So, that seems like a revenue financial no-brainer to the Championship and the League 1 and 2 clubs.
Yeah, 100%. And again, I think a lot of the Football League clubs have actually been, according to reports, have actually been in favour of this because of that. Because as it stands, by all accounts, there's not been much in the way of planning for, adding funding to make up for the lack of fans at stadiums, ticket sales and the TV money. So I think they're just happy to hear that there'll be any money injected into the clubs and to the league. And again, I think it is in the Premier League and the clubs in the Premier League, their interest that there is money going to these clubs, because obviously we don't want to see clubs folding, and clubs should look out for each other. So all that being good, but I think, as you say, there's no surprise that this has been knocked back by large part by the teams that aren't part of that traditional top 6.
Yeah.
A lot of reasons for that, and I understand it, probably because it'd be a bit like turkeys waiting for Christmas, because
absolutely
it does sound like there was a lot of power that was going to be shifted towards the top 6 clubs, or particularly the 9 established clubs that have been in the Premier League the longest. I think it was Everton, and was it Aston Villa the other one? Even though I can't, but regardless, there were 9 clubs that would have been standing pretty strong there, because they would have had more voting rights than any other teams that got promoted at any point into that 18-team division.
Yeah.
And again, what I will say though is that there were some good ideas put forward in this proposal. There was some where it did look like a bit of a power grab by Manchester United and Liverpool. But I think that by and large, this isn't going to go away, because I think there are going to be some counter proposals, and I think this is something that's going to be people are going to keep chipping at.
I think so. I mean, it'd be smart to do that, because if this proposal doesn't get through, fine, because as you say, Turkey's voting for Christmas. The 9 or 14 clubs that wouldn't benefit from the injection of power they'd be given with the new proposal wouldn't vote for it. But that isn't to say that it should be instantly dismissed. There is a lot of good stuff in this proposal that shouldn't just be dismissed off the table. A compromise should be met halfway, and they should find a way to be inclusive with all the Premier League teams, as well as there is a compromise out there. So to dismiss it completely, I don't think is going to be a smart move long term, and I don't think we'll see that happen. I think this will probably come back in some form after they've had time to negotiate.
With that being the case, I mean, I've mentioned the the compromise in terms of the scheduling of the League Cup and the increased fees for TV money for teams in the Championship, particularly, but wider from a wide perspective for the Football League.
Yeah.
What are if there was going to be a project bigger picture, what would be your proposals? What would you add, or what would you take out of the plan that was put forward?
Well, I'd take out the fact that only the top 9 clubs get a say.
Yeah.
I don't like that. I don't think that should be the case, because it'd suit them, because the power's in their hands, and that's what they're going to gain from this new proposal.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in this project big picture, was the thing behind it was the bigger clubs wanted to negotiate their own TV deals. I think currently now, whatever the Sky or BT or whichever international broadcaster, whatever the price that they pay for the TV revenue is split evenly between the 20 teams, which great for Bournemouth, Crystal Palace, but for somebody like United, who claim to have 1.1 billion social media fans around the world, they could sell 1.1 billion games, whereas Southampton might only be able to sell 10 million, whatever the number is. So that would be where the injection of cash would come from, and that's why United and Liverpool ultimately are incentivized to do this. So I'm not wrong there, am I?
No, 100%. I think what I would say is, I agree. That I think what this was.
Your question was, what would I leave in and take out?
Yeah.
I'd give everybody a vote. Sorry, just to
an equal
clarify.
Voting system for 18 clubs. Would you go to 18?
Yeah, I like the 18 idea because I like the idea of the bottom Premier League team plays the top couple of the playoff championship teams, because I've always thought that to get up to the Premier League or to get up to any league, you've got to prove that you're good enough. If you weren't good enough to get up automatically, it's no good beating somebody who finished 6th. You've done that 3 times this season already, or twice, whatever. Prove that you're good enough to replace the 16th place team in the Premier League. Play them in a playoff. And I don't think the Premier League team who finishes 16th and asked to play in the Championship playoff would have any, qualms about that, because you've not been good enough to finish any higher than 16th. So this is your punishment. You've got to play off for your future. I really like that idea. I like it better than the current format.
I think
that's what I keep. That's what I keep.
Just to add to that point there, I might be generalising a bit much here, but from my memory, historically, the team that finishes 18th and gets relegated is usually a lot closer to 17th than they are to 19th. I think quite often we see there's 2 bad teams that deserve to go down, and there's always a team that's fighting for the life and it scraps and it often comes down to the last day. And I think that it's quite tough to put them in that bracket with the other 2. Yeah. And then you've got, if you've got a team that's coming up and they've won through a playoff. So I in the Championship, I think that there is probably something to be said about that. Obviously, it'd be different if there was a reduction to 18 teams, but just to add to your point there, because I think that is something that should be considered.
Yeah. So on the topic of teams selling their own individual TV rights, obviously now the news earlier in the week or late last week was that the broadcasting of all Premier League games is going to be stopped. It's going to go back to the original TV package of 5 games per game week, as was the Sky and BT deal, that's fine. But the other 5 will be shown, but on a pay-per-view basis. And as we know, the controversial figure is $14.95 per game on whatever Sky Sports or BT box office. So yeah, apologies, a little bit of a technical glitch there. But my question to Kieron was, will he be parting with £14.95 for the Newcastle versus Manchester United game on Saturday night?
And this is all just part of the issues recording from Wales, but the answer to your question is yes. I probably will be paying the £14.95 for the.
You will.
I will. I've got reasons.
Surprising.
I think, to be fair, we've texted about it. I think we both agree that £15 is too much, and I'm rounding it up to £15 because that's what it really is.
Yeah.
It is too much for an individual game, but I will say, after thinking about it since that discussion, the way I look at it is this. I think it is only going to be for October. I do think we're going to see fans return to stadiums just before Christmas, potentially. Maybe I'm wrong, but I do think that if it does go on, I think we will go back to a phase where they start airing games for free again, but we'll see. But I think I'm looking at this and thinking it'll be a short-term thing. The majority of the big games will be on, for United, will be on BT and Sky, and I think because they do take priority because they're the most watched team. Most people tune in to watch United.
Yeah.
And obviously, I understand they've picked United probably for good reason because, like as I was saying, United do attract a lot of viewers. So I'm happy to pay this as like a one-off fee, thinking that this will probably be the only time I have to pay it for the entire month. And for the games that aren't United, I will just catch up on Match Today as I did in the old days. I will say, with regards to saying the £15 fee is unfair, I do think it will. I think it can come down. I think it will come down. I think
it has to. I think it has to.
They've put that fee out, I think, to test the water and see how receptive fans are. I also wonder a little bit as well whether the Premier clubs are sort of voted for this high fee in, thinking this will maybe put pressure on the government to allow fans to return to stadiums, because I think that's what they really want. They want to have fans back in the stadium, even if they only have 30% for a club like United, that that can add up to a lot of income in terms of gate receipts.
And it should happen at this stage. If they're not in the full lockdown in that particular area, because I don't know if you saw doing the rounds on social media this week that the London Palladium was virtually full.
Yeah.
For I think it was an evening with Arsene Wenger. So, to get 2,000 people in the Palladium or however many it was, I don't know if that's the exact number, but for an indoor arena, surely it makes complete sense then if you're going to do that to let people in a football ground where you can space. It's an open air arena. I don't see the issue.
Yeah, and again, I think there's reports that the Royal Albert Hall is going to be reopening soon. I went there last year because I'm a big opera fan. Obviously not. Went to watch Grime Show there. Great stuff. But it's tight. It's actually a really tight arena, and I don't care. Even if they're spacing people out, there's more risk there than if we're in an open stadium. So I do think common sense will prevail, and I wonder whether the Premier League, like I say, are just trying to put pressure on the government to say, look, people aren't willing to pay this fee. We need to reopen stadiums if we're going to make some of the money back that we're losing out on. So I wonder that too. And the last thing I would say is, to be fair to the Premier League, if I was trying to defend that figure, Championship and below Football League are charging £10 a game to their fans. Their tickets are generally cheaper as it is, and the coverage they're getting is often one camera angle. No commentary, no broadcasting at all. And I think, it will cost the broadcasters money to make the Premier League product what it is. And they want to protect that too. They don't want to put out a poor product. And that's why they've given BT and Sky the money.
No, I guarantee that is the case. But the argument is always the same, simple supply and demand. If you put the money down, more people are likely to pay it. So that the overall revenue probably go up anyway.
Yeah. Again, the only other thing I was just going to add to that is that Sky and BT won't be profiting from this. I think that's something that's maybe been lost to the wider conversation. I think a lot of people see this as a chance for the two TV companies to sort of pounce. And again, as far as I'm aware, they are only going to be taking the money to cover the costs of the broadcast, and I think then all the profits will be going to the clubs, which, as far as I'm concerned, is probably the right thing to do to make up some of the the loss of season ticket sales.
Yeah, and obviously the Glazers will reinvest and spend big in January, so it's all worth it in the project big picture, Kieron. It's all worth it. Personally, I think I won't be paying the £15. I'll be voting with my feet and not paying to watch that, in the hope that the Premier League, government, whoever the powers may be, do see sense on it, because I think it is too much money for your average punter to pay, and it's also going to encourage people to gather in groups, which is the last thing the government want right now.
In pubs and such, yeah.
It's going to encourage piracy and illegal streaming and things like that. So I think we might see one, maybe two rounds of fixtures at this price, and hopefully either the Premier League or the government will cave on it and either reduce the price or open the stadiums, one or the other. I think you're right, we will see a reduction, and I hope we do, because it's not fair on the fans, really. I
agree with what you made two good points there about the social consequences of it, i.e. that we will see. Most people I've spoken to have mentioned that they're planning on just going to a pub that's showing the game, and they can spend that £15 on 3 pints depending on where you are, and that'll cover you through the game. You can go home rather than watching it in your own home. And so there's a case made for that, and like you say, this will promote streaming, I think, because again, a few of the other people I've spoken to have said that they're going to try and legally stream it. I'm a bit of a snob in that respect, because I think I grew up watching too many streams and I've had too many bad experiences. So I think now I'm happy to just pay what it takes. I think there is an interesting question though about because I always used to think, they never show the 3 p.m. kickoffs because they always talk about protecting gate receipts. And I always used to think, I'm a fan. United sells out every week. Should it not be the case that, if you're not one of the 75,000 fans that managed to get a ticket, should you not be able to watch these games now? We're in the 21st century.
Yeah, why is the product not available?
You're restricted, and I always used to ask myself, how much would I pay to watch? Because it's obviously, typically speaking, the best games picked for TV. So it'd be a United Burnley game that would be one of the ones that would be moved to 3 p.m.
Yeah.
How much would I pay for that? And again, £15 is a lot of money. Personally, for me, I probably would go that far if it meant that I could watch the game live. But again, I understand that is a lot of money, not just for what some people are not mega bucks. It's a lot of money for me too. It's about how much you care. But I don't know. There is a wider question here about, what this will mean, because if it is the case that this is popular, if a lot of people are willing to pay this money, if they let the genie out of the bottle and people become accustomed to being able to pay to watch these games that wouldn't otherwise be televised, what does that mean? Will people and will the TV companies argue that, well, actually we can make enough money on this? Maybe Premier League clubs will say, well, if we're selling a TV pass for £15, people might not be coming to the stadium, but more people will pay that than pay £50 to come and watch us get beat 3-0. So I don't know, maybe there'll be a shift there. I hope not. I hope
there's a reason people pay more money to go into a ground, though, isn't there, than watch it at home?
100%. But then maybe if we start maybe we could end up in a situation where we could start subsidising ticket prices with revenues from TV. If you sell rights to fans that can't make it. With all that said, though,
they should have subsidised ticket prices long ago. To be honest, if a team can afford to spend £200 million on it, this is why the market's so inflated right now, because these teams have so much money that they can demand it from other teams. This is why it's spiraling out of control a little bit, isn't it?
The one thing I will say to that end is that if they do go down the road of looking at maybe subsidising ticket sales, you could reasonably sell a ticket for £25 if you can sell a load of TV passes for £5 to fans who can't make it. And I think that there'd be an argument that you could make that money up, particularly if they could sell them abroad. But again, I appreciate it's difficult with the Premier League.
And the example I gave of United having 1 billion global fans, they could make that no problem.
But again, if you're going to go down that road, I do think that it would be right to pool the money, because I think otherwise we could get into a situation where United can make a substantial amount more than your Burnleys down the road or other clubs. So they would need to find a way of making that fair, because I don't want to see a situation much like the previous conversation about changing the voting rights. I don't want to see a situation where there's a competitive imbalance, because the reality is the reason the Premier League is the strongest league in the world in terms of the TV sales and money, because ultimately that's what it's all about for all these clubs now, the businesses. Absolutely. The Premier League is the most watched league in world football for the very reason that it is.
I think actually.
I'm not surprised to hear that. I was probably wanted to say that, but I was hesitant in case.
I mean, I think you're probably right. I could be wrong, but I think I am right on that.
If it's not, it'll be in the top three. I'm sure of that, and it is because it's competitive. United don't win every year, neither the City, neither the Liverpool. La Liga, I think, are actually moving towards or they're trying to move to a Premier League type model, because I think there is a fatigue to seeing Barca and Real share. I know Atletico won it. That was a one-off in I don't know how many years. You'd have to go back now.
Well, and then Valencia's the closest one, isn't it?
Yeah, so that was roughly 20 years ago, maybe 17.
2004, I think, Benitez.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, okay, 16.
Yeah, so but you're right, your point stands.
Yeah, so we want to see the Premier League remain competitive, and we want to see, a bit more fluidity. But again, I understand why, from the perspective of trying to make things more stable, you want to maybe reduce the amount of fluctuation that a team can go up and down based on whether they stay in the Premier League or whether they have one bad year and they go down. They can maybe tumble 2-3 divisions. So it's a lot to think about. But like I said, I do think it is important we have this podcast, because whilst Project Big Picture was voted down, those conversations are not going to go anywhere. I think now that these proposals have been, whether they were stumbled upon or whether they were leaked, I think those suggestions, there's something in there for everyone. I think it was, not all of it was great, but I think some people are very interested in some aspects of it. The pay-per-view TV, I think one way or another, we're eventually going to get to a situation where, whether it's through a streaming service or subscription, we will eventually have that product. And it is important they get it right, because if they get it wrong, they could put off and alienate a lot of fans, and you could actually put, you give an advantage to some of our competitors in terms of La Liga, Bundesliga, Serie A.
Yeah, absolutely. Kieron, thank you very much for joining us on the Game of Two Halves extra time bonus content. We'll probably do more of these if and when the opportunity arises and the talking points arise. But thank you very much for your time this evening. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little 20-25 minute snip. And that's a little taste of what you can get from the podcast. We do talk about this and issues like this on a very regular basis and in a lot more detail on the full podcast, which you can find on iTunes and Spotify. Video versions are available on YouTube. But join us again for the next episode of the Game of Two Halves podcast, where we'll discuss our top 50 Premier League players. Join us then.